Welcome to Savvy Business, Life Unscripted, with your host, Christina Rivera, where our guests share their wisdom and valuable business tips, empowering our audience to expand their personal potential.
Hi, Dr. Michael Platt. Welcome to Savvy Broadcasting, Life Unscripted. I'm so grateful to have you here this wonderful evening.
Well, glad to be here.
Well, we had a little bit of a scare just before the interview. They had my adrenaline go up, but you're going to help our whole audience, including myself, learn a little bit about the impact of adrenaline in our lives, how we can work with eliminating it so we can get ourselves to as much healthy wellness as possible. You have a new book out called Adrenaline Dominant. Very important for anyone who wants to learn to slay that adrenaline, keep it in check. But before we go there, I'd love to get some feedback. What even prompted you to write your book?
Well, my mother died at the age of 61 of breast cancer. And I realized right after she died that I had inherited her hormones. You know, men and women had the identical hormones, different levels, but the same hormones. And at that time, this is going way back, I used to have to slap my face when I was driving, trying to keep my eyes open. And the thing is that my mother, not only did she have breast cancer, but she also had a belly on her, only around the waist. And the only thing that'll do that is insulin. So I knew she had a lot of insulin. I knew she was low in progesterone because she had breast cancer. So I started using progesterone cream, and I never got sleepy. And I realized that progesterone blocked insulin. And so I got interested in hormones, and I read as much as I could, opened up a clinic in 1995 devoted to hormone therapy. And what made it, I guess, helpful for me, I could sit down and talk with people for an hour or two. And and you learn about how the body operates. And I started seeing people that had the same problems. And the only thing that could actually cause these problems was actually adrenaline. So, and I found that after they were started on progesterone, these problems went away. So anyway,
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah. So yeah.
No, I totally love this because I've had some health issues. Of course, weight around the middle too. I did lose 50 pounds 2 years ago, but still the stubborn area for me would be right around the middle. And I know that's the same for many other women that right now I've gone through menopause. Just started it. It's been 1 full year. And so I'm guessing a lot of women out there have gone through the same thing I have. So what do you tell people when you come to? Do you do a full-on blood work? What does it look like to get a full understanding of where they're at?
To be honest with you, I've always preferred treating people rather than lab tests.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that, because you could never go wrong treating a person, but you can go very wrong treating a lab test. And especially there are a lot of naturopaths out there that are, and they do saliva tests. And when people have a lot of adrenaline, you cannot do a saliva test because the adrenaline, as a survival hormone, cuts off blood supply to various different areas in the body, and it cuts off blood supply to the salivary gland. So hormones don't get into the saliva. So when they do a saliva test, they get a low cortisol, and based on that, they diagnose adrenal fatigue, which is a condition that doesn't exist. And sometimes they wind up putting these people on cortisol when they already have a high cortisol, and cortisol is not a happy hormone. So anyway, the bottom line is that I prefer treating people. And let me tell you something, it's not subtle when people have a lot of adrenaline, because you know the symptoms are very unmistakable.
Okay.
Well, you know, if your listeners want to know if they have a lot of adrenaline, you know, first of all, they'll have trouble sleeping. And the reason for that, adrenaline peaks during the night, especially at 2:30 in the morning. And a lot of people get up at that time to urinate because adrenaline gives people that urge to urinate. On television, they call that an overactive bladder, but it's adrenaline. The other thing they'll notice, they'll have a lot of tension in the back of their neck. And that tension at the back of the neck can actually cause ringing in the ears because it cuts off blood supply to the inner ear. And it can cause severe headaches that are 100% of the time mistaken for migraines. And these are not migraines. This is something called occipital neuritis. And it comes from the occipital nerve sheath at the base of the skull, and very easy to fix. But you need to recognize. Okay. And people with a lot of adrenaline, they're quick to anger. They're short fused. That's where road rage comes from. It is adrenaline. And you may have heard of a condition called ADHD.
Yeah.
And doctors don't realize that ADHD is all about adrenaline. And doctors are not trained to treat the cause of illness. They're just trained to give out Band-Aids. But if you know what causes an illness, you can eliminate it. So ADHD, you can eliminate in 24 hours.
No.
By lowering adrenaline. You've heard of fibromyalgia.
Yes.
Another condition felt to be incurable. That's also caused by excess adrenaline. And bipolar disorders caused by excess adrenaline. And you talked about weight. Adrenaline, I am convinced, is the number one cause of weight gain. And you're saying, well, how can that be? How can a hormone like adrenaline cause weight gain? Well, you need to understand why the body releases adrenaline. Most people think of it as the fight or flight hormone.
Yeah.
And that's correct. When people are in danger, the body pours out adrenaline. But that's a very rare reason why the body puts out adrenaline. The primary function of adrenaline is to raise sugar levels for the brain. And most people are not aware that the brain uses more sugar than any other tissue in the body. And anytime the body detects that the brain is low in sugar, it puts out adrenaline to raise sugar levels. They call that hypoglycemia, a low blood sugar.
Yeah.
And people fall asleep when you take sugar away from the brain. And remember, I used to fall asleep when I was driving.
Wow.
Well, so
this is amazing.
So the thing, so adrenaline, raises sugar levels through a process called gluconeogenesis, where it converts protein into sugar. But what happens is when the body produces adrenaline, it's a very powerful hormone, and it creates stress to the body. And the body responds to stress by putting out cortisol. And the first thing cortisol does, it also raises sugar levels. So now while people are lying in bed, they're putting out two hormones that raise sugar. And the whole thing about sugar, it doesn't matter whether you're eating sugar or if the body's making it. If you don't burn it up, the body takes all that extra sugar and puts it into your fat cells for storage. And I'm sure it's no one cause of weight gain and nobody ever talks about it.
Wow. Now, can I get deeper here in that? I'd love to understand, why do we have so much adrenaline running through the culture? Is there something in particular? Is it that we work too much? Is it internet access? Is it that we're moving all the time? Like, what is it?
Well, it's just that the brain uses two different fuels to function. One is glucose, and the other is ketones. Which is actually more important than the glucose is. And so right away, you can see that if you provide the two nutrients that the brain requires to function, then the body doesn't have to put out adrenaline to provide the fuel. So, so this is where knowing what causes a problem can actually eliminate the problem. I've always been very passionate about medicine, but let me tell you something, it's very rewarding getting people well. I had a fellow who came in to see me, and the reason he came in to see me is that every morning he would wake up and vomit. Well, what makes that easy, there's only one thing that'll cause that, and that's adrenaline. There's even a condition called cyclical vomiting syndrome in children, where they start vomiting, they can't stop, they have to be hospitalized. They don't know the cause of it, but it's adrenaline. So every morning he would wake up and vomit. And he had severe fibromyalgia, which was understandable because adrenaline also causes fibromyalgia. So in any event, I put some progesterone cream on his forearm, and he rubbed his arms together. And after about 5 minutes, we started talking. He sat back in his chair and he looked at me and he said, "Doc, in my entire life, I've never felt this good." That's after 5 minutes. And he never had another episode of vomiting after he left my office. And it's worthwhile helping people like that. And it's
Now,
simple.
Can I ask you something? Because you said you sat with him and you realized, okay, he has too much adrenaline in his system. That's what's causing this. How did you know progesterone was the best? Or do you sit down with someone and then through that person you realize which hormone's best to make it balance? Like, how do you figure out how to balance them out and which hormone to use to balance them out?
Well, that's where having a long time sit and talk to patients, helped me, because it wasn't hard to discover that progesterone not only blocked insulin, so they didn't get sleepy in the afternoon or sleep when they were driving, but it's known for blocking estrogen. That's what it's known for. But people are not aware that it also blocks adrenaline. So it blocks the three most toxic hormones in the body. It's an incredibly important hormone, and doctors know almost nothing about it, especially gynecologists. And I know doctors that you would think would know the most about hormones, but they get no training in hormones. Doctors get no training in hormones at all. And yet they control everything in the body, hormones, and doctors don't know about it.
Yeah. Well, go on. I was going to say, for someone listening in and says, okay, I think I have a problem with this. Should I just go out and get some progesterone cream? It's probably a bad idea. They should go to someone like you to get to talking so they don't do too much of it or the wrong hormone.
They will not find a doctor that knows anything about hormones.
Okay. That's
if they find a doctor that'll prescribe progesterone, he's going to prescribe oral progesterone. Progesterone comes in pills and it also comes in creams. And oral progesterone goes through the GI tract, goes straight to the liver, and converts into a different hormone. And yet 99% of women are now being put on oral progesterone rather than the cream. It's because, well, it's not their doctor's fault, because doctors are not trained. Yeah. But you can get oral, you can get the cream in a 5% strength. Now, 5% means that each pump is 50 milligrams, which is the exact strength you need to block adrenaline. And you can get that over the counter without a prescription.
Oh my gosh.
And the only other thing you have to do is to provide the right fuel to the brain. One is glucose, and the best source of glucose comes from vegetables. And vegetables are carbohydrates. They all break down into sugar, but they don't stimulate a lot of insulin. Candy and soda break down into a lot of sugar, but they stimulate a lot of insulin, which lowers sugar levels, defeats the purpose. So vegetables are the best source of glucose for the brain. And then the ketones you can get directly without going on a ketogenic diet from coconut oil or MCT oil. And coconut oil is a great fuel for cooking. And MCT oil has no flavor. You can add it to anything. A lot of people put it in coffee. They call that bulletproof coffee. But and that's all you need to do. The coconut oil, the MCT oil, and vegetables, and progesterone cream. That's it.
Now, can I ask you, because I've gone through menopause. I just spent 1 year, no period. Are there other hormones we should pay attention to? Like I hear there's a loss of progesterone and other hormones and even testosterone. Is there anything else that people should know when they go through that? Because I know my body has definitely changed.
Well, when women go through the menopause, their ovaries stop working. And the ovaries produce 4 different hormones. It produces estrogen, produces progesterone, testosterone, and DHEA. And all of these hormones can be replaced if necessary. Now, estrogen, not my favorite hormone. Well, I'm just saying it's not but there is a safe type of estrogen called estriol, not estradiol, but estriol. And it's a natural estrogen. It's the only one that does not cause cancer. And it's the only one that's effective for vaginal dryness. And you can get this over the counter. Now, the only hormone that you cannot get over the counter is testosterone. And that's an important hormone for women. The number one cause of death in women is heart attacks. You don't hear that.
How does testosterone help? how does testosterone help with that?
Well, the heart has more testosterone receptor sites than any other muscle in the body. So it's an important hormone for the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the reason why women die of heart attacks is a lack of testosterone. That's my own feeling. I mean, don't quote me on this.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
say
Is there foods we can take? Like, does meat have a lot of these hormones, or is there any other way? No. Oh, okay.
No. Now, DHEA does downregulate into testosterone. Mm-hmm. So that is one way of getting some testosterone. And women with the highest DHEA levels have the greatest longevity. So it's an important hormone for women also.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Wow.
So, yeah. So
there's so much here. I mean, you could go on like all night long here, because I know everyone listening, and especially a lot of our listeners, happen to be in the mid-range from 40 to 50 years old. So I'm sure a lot of them have gone through just what I've gone through or are going to go through it. So I know this information is going to help everyone, because not only people going through menopause, but just everyday people. I think with the hustle bustle of everyday life, I think there's more adrenaline coursing through people's bodies today. And I think finding a way to balance it out and understand where you sit and how you can make your life better, they should get your book today. How can they do that?
You know, I wrote another book called The Miracle of Bioidentical Hormones. And this came out around the same time that Suzanne Summers was putting out her book, like The Sexy Ways and stuff. And Suzanne Summers and I did not get along. You know, she was seeing a doctor in Santa Barbara who put her on 8 milligrams a day of estradiol while she was still having her periods, which means she had plenty of estrogen. And that's when she came down with breast cancer. So when she went to Germany, got some mistletoe injections, came back, and went right back to the same doctor, put her right back on estrogen. And she started bleeding from the uterus, couldn't stop, and had to have a hysterectomy. Now, in her books, she never blamed estrogen for either the cancer or having to have a hysterectomy. So I felt that she was giving women a lot of bad information. But so, like I say, I was not a big fan of it, Suzanne Summers. But the book I wrote, called The Miracle of Bioidentical Hormones, literally brought thousands of patients to my office from all over the country and all over the world came in because of this book. And it talked about hormones, how they could be used to get people well, you know, and talked about different conditions that people could use different hormones and get better. So I like hormones. You know,
well, you become an expert at it, which is great, because you can help people restore their health back to normal. Do you still take new patients, or are you totally full at the moment?
Well, actually, I've retired.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah. But if they go to my website, which is plattwellness.com, there's a lot of information about hormones, a lot that they won't get elsewhere.
Awesome. Well, I'm so grateful, and you're such a blessing that you've put this together for everyone out there so they can heal themselves of any coursing adrenaline run amok. Everyone, go get a copy of Adrenaline Dominance. You know, also they can go to your website, which you just gave before, plattwellness.com. And yes, you were going to say something?
Well, I was going to say, a lot of people have dogs. And a lot of dogs have what's called separation anxiety. Now, it doesn't matter what's causing anxiety. It's always adrenaline that's causing it, always. So even in dogs, the separation anxiety is caused by adrenaline. So it's very effective for dogs. You take the progesterone cream and put it inside the ear, and it goes away in about 1 minute. You've heard of babies that have colic. You know, colic is also caused by adrenaline. And instead of being up all night with a baby crying, you can take some progesterone cream and rub it on the baby's belly. It goes away in about 5 minutes. Now, these are the babies that do a lot of kicking in the womb, which is also caused by excess adrenaline. You know, there's so much that goes on with adrenaline, and doctors learn nothing about it. It's not taught. I don't know of a single book other than mine that talks about ADHD. And you know, and creative people, you know, have the most adrenaline because their brain is hard at work.
Hyper
And
speed.
yeah. And, this is why, they get into drugs and alcohol. Creative, if you look at the music industry and actors and actresses, they get into drugs and alcohol. They're just trying to relax from all the adrenaline. But nobody approaches it from this standpoint. Doctors do not treat the cause of illness. They just give out Band-Aids.
I know.
This fellow named Matthew Perry, who just died, had a serious addiction problem. And I'm sure it was all related to excess adrenaline.
Wow. So sad. Now, can I ask you something? One last thing, progesterone. When you mentioned putting the cream on, is the amount you mentioned safe? Like there's no negative side effects for some people? Because I'm thinking of getting
the only downside of progesterone is found in people that have another condition called type 3 diabetes. You've heard of type 1 and type 2. Type 3 diabetes is insulin resistance in the brain. And these people, if you give them progesterone, will actually increase their adrenaline immediately. And they don't have a test for type 3 diabetes. This is actually a test for type 3 diabetes that is unknown to the medical community. Because once you know that somebody is predisposed to type 3 diabetes, then they're predisposed to Alzheimer's. And Alzheimer's is basically a disease of prevention. So if you have somebody that responds to progesterone by getting more adrenaline, give them a lot of MCT oil and coconut oil and vegetables and try to prevent the Alzheimer's from coming on. As it is, they already know to treat Alzheimer's, at least some doctors, with coconut oil to cure it.
Interesting. Wow, you've given us a lot of food for thought. I'm so grateful. I thank you so much, Dr. Platt, for coming today and sharing your great wisdom on Savvy Broadcasting. Thank you.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You betcha.
Looking for a hilarious read? Well, check out my latest book, My Crazy Roommates. The names have been changed to protect the deranged. Step into the wild and unpredictable world of young adulthood in the heart of New York City. Brace yourself for a roller coaster ride through the trials, tribulations, and hilarious moments of shared living spaces with a colorful cast of characters. Fasten your seatbelt and get ready to laugh, cringe, and maybe shed a tear as you delve into the pages of My Crazy Roommates. So get your copy today, available at Amazon.com.